Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode. And so, not only do the mysteries of life continue in 2022, but a perspective arose to me that I was wondering, could we all be ideas in the mind of the cosmos? Human beings, they have considerations of intelligence, or the mind is the word we use to contain how our eyes are being our eyes. I would like the viewers to look at the screen of the video. I'm going to bring the notepad. Are we just an idea in the mind of the cosmos? Did the ancient yogis, those interested in Eventi, or I could say even through the Hare Krishna movement, was there a reason behind how ancient cultures were fathoming that I don't know the exact number, but like 64 million years or some number in those lines, 64 million years of human life is equivalent to, for example, 3 days of Krishna, a god, dreaming, right? So I guess the way I'd approach this is, first I'd start from what patterns symbols, what patterns, symbols, and strategies associate to the individual, to conscious individualism. You see in the subtitle, guys, I've written from universal Eventism to conscious, conscious individualism. So pretty much the approach I'm taking, pretty much this episode is, okay, here, I'll frame it properly. I'll say it this way. In this episode, a human being is on some level wondering about how can we, what are the ways that we can make sense of not just individual consciousness, but how this universal event could be alive. You know, that's another way the title can be said. An idea in the mind of the cosmos is another way of saying the universe is alive. Oh man, I was listening to, one of my hobbies, guys, is instead of music, I pretty much do a lot of work, and I just listen to lectures in the spare time, and I challenge myself to see if I can understand something while multitasking. And I was looking at, certain videos on YouTube where, there was a philosopher by the name of David Chalmers, and he was talking about a sort of epigenetic approach to how consciousness could potentially be outside of the body, and if consciousness is outside of the body, in some sense what is inside the body cannot explain. the starting point of human perception equals awakened mind, or I would say it this way, maybe it's better. It's to say born body plus awakened mind divided by an unchangeable witness. Or maybe I should write this in a different way. I should write it pretty much like another variant of this. I'll write it here. Or unchangeable witness, in which the born body and our so pretty much we have this attention. I am considering that the human being has dimensions of existence in matter and has dimensions of experience in space. When a person wonders about where is my mind, it's like the winds of the realm. When somebody wonders about where is my body, the answer, the winds of the realm, in some sense point to that the answer is it's in my mind, right? But if somebody asked, where is my mind, right, it's as if the world of the sensory is an event of the human brain. It's like everything on this planet is happening, and it's happening to itself, and it's happening to the world. And the consciousness is the ability to recognize how what is happening in the world is happening to self. Consciousness is another way of saying, it's like a person, let's say a real estate agent takes someone to, show them a house, and the person goes into the first room of that house and doesn't look at anything else in the house, right? Consciousness would be equivalent to that. Consciousness would be access to the microcosm. Consciousness is the microcosm, and it's like conscious experience is the microcosm, and unconscious existence is the macrocosm. So let's say we have an unchangeable witness, we have the intelligence of space or the intelligence of the moment, and the intelligence of moment is being divided between a born body and an awakened mind. Now I would translate this into this, where I would say the unchangeable witness is like the number 0, and the awakened mind is duality, and the born body is just an individual existence. So pretty much, guys, I think I have ridiculously found, a mathematical representation of human perception, or of intelligent perception, So who knew intelligent perception equals 0 divided by 3? Who knew this whole time, the singular and the dual are, playing games with the void. It's honestly an analysis of intelligence, guys. On some level, we have to be humble enough to see how we are incapable. You see, this is something they don't say, right? But one of the most quickest way to get a species to activate is through its incapability. okay, so what that means is people don't like failure, and it makes sense. And why should a person ever fail? But sometimes when there is failure, there is turbulence, and it's like another way of saying, if there was this pilot piloting this airplane, and suddenly there was turbulence in the airplane, and the pilot somehow could know that people were freaking out in the airplane, the pilot would have a greater seriousness to, in some sense, get the airplane out of turbulence, right? And so what are we finding ourselves, like, how is the human experience happening when our eyes open? That is like a pilot in an airplane. The body leads to a plane of existence. You see, we think our body is just our biological body. No, our body is all that it leads to. You see, it's like this strange situation on Earth where life is in some sense a mind moving a body and a body moving a mind. This is such an important relationship. I get a bit emotional about it because you don't understand the difference. Whoever you are listening to me, there is a way that life can happen where the emotional turmoils, or how can I tell you, it's like the conflicts of the cycle. It's pretty much like a body that is it's like the body's task is to overcome pain, to surpass pain, and the mind's task is to surpass the meaning of that pain, which is suffering. There's the mind moving the body, and then there is, in some sense, the body moving the mind, okay? And the mind, what is the mind? The mind is actually unknown space, and the body is known matter in space. At least when you look at the great mystery of human experience, like human beings trying to, bring down this colossal problem. For me, right now, we're living at a time on this earth where there is no reason for outer realm war, but there's incredible reasons for inner transformation, which is another way of saying that as psychologies have accumulated memories, as they have in some sense patternized themselves in the realm. One of the greatest revolutions of a lifetime, is a reset of the context of meaning. I don't know how I was privileged enough to access this, but I will tell you that all these Mr. Within talks started really after an event that took place from 2011 onwards, where pretty much I had reached a point in my life where I'm like, I am stuck. This is like I am in some sense, like it's as if there is no hope for movement into true meaning, right? And I remember that there's this park in Toronto, Canada called Edwards Gardens. It has this like small stream river thing and there's rocks in the middle, and I remember I had gone and sat on one of those rocks, and for a moment I realized that who I think I am is just like any other thought that has come and gone. The mystery of perception is one that we live a life and then we go back to sleep and we have no problem with our own conscious absence of consciousness in existence. And then we wake up like nothing happened. It's like the whole species is fearing death, but everybody sleeps at night without a single, problem. They're like, they tuck themselves saying, oh man, it's like, I'm going to get some good sleep. And the person doesn't realize sleep is non-existence. Dream states are, you can say, a sort of mental existence, but the body is on some level non-existent, right? Something people don't realize about dreams, it's a subtler state where the mind is actually creating a body for itself. There isn't just the biological body. Every memory is acting as a body for the inner realms to take shape and animate. Now, if we consider that there, like in some sense, the mind is like unknown, I mean, nobody can disagree with this. We don't know as a species. Our greatest, the greatest intellectuals on this planet are in some sense baffled by how, at the end of the day, regardless of how the neurons move, we are inscribing our own value in the void. That is what is happening, really. That is the true nature of the unknown. This is why, for me, I don't know how to tell you, but it's like, do you know what it was? It was like, I remember the first time I truly understood yoga and meditation, and I read the Upanishads and the Vedas, and it's as if like your whole life you have been, imagine walking in a theater in a film that you did not direct, and you suddenly see there are some actors in the film in ancient history who are like, you are not just, you're not only just not an actor, you are the director of worlds. That means if the body is experiencing a singular existential dimension, the mind, through experience, is multidimensionalizing the body. That is what is going on. It's not just light entering our eyes. That light that enters our eyes is processed into multidimensionality. It is processed into how consciousness can begin through memory, pinpoint manifestation into meaning, into linguistic meaning. It's as if like, for some people they read the Upanishads and they're like, no way, I found a blissful heaven. For me, it's as if I would honestly say what enlightenment was, or how I think I got enlightened in this life, or I don't know what happened to me, but something that happened to me in this life that made me notice that the unknown is looking through my eyes, and the whole attempt of magic and spirituality that is trying to contact the unknown is foolish, right? You see, it's as if there's a sort of romanticism with the intensities that fiction brings for our psychology, People don't even realize the concept of God and like how mind-blowing that was when it arrived. What God is an inconceivable primal mover of manifestation. It's as if a human being looks at a tree and wonders, okay, does this tree have a personality? A person looks at a tree, they see that it is just happening. A person looks at the sky, looks at universals such as color and shape and space, and the person just sees that it's like they are all here. If the mind is considered, if we say the mind is unknown, and if we say the body is known, it's another way of saying, when I say a mind moves a body, it's like an unknown field of activity is moving known particles inside it, right? But when the body moves the mind, this is a bit scary, right? That means it's like materialists are accepting materialism so easily, and it's like philosophers are kind of looking at that, continental philosophers are looking at like, let's say fundamental, materialist fundamentalism, just like we have people very strictly believing that, for example, there's a God and God gave a revelation and that revelation has to be followed, as if like, why did God make free will if we all had to be cloned by one ideological program? Imagine all the religious people who thought that religion was a sort of, you had to just embody the words. It's as if they go to heaven and God's like, you guys overreacted to the message I sent you, It's an overreaction. Why? Because the nature of the mind is, if you don't feel certain from the beginning, uncertainty will in some sense enter through the cracks. Honestly, I remember when I was young, I wouldn't have considered myself to be a confident person. There's still moments in life where I feel that You know, it's like sometimes confidence arises from the realities that you have cared to experience. But later on, I realized that the only way a being can stop all the psychological turmoil, you know, stop all the ways that the mind is like, you know, choosing to chaoticize itself. Unless there is an acceptance of the unknown, that's the first part. And then there's the acceptance of an unknown being, and that's the, let's say, second part. Then the third part is that after you have accepted the unknown, you not only notice you are the unknown, but you notice that the materiality that the earliest human beings were trying to get out of samsara, get out of the simulations of karma, right? It's as if that simulation of karma is the divine work. It's like from the human perspective, oh man, I'm trapped in a world of cause and effect. But from the unknown world's self perspective, karma is just the art of the gods when they're bored. Do you know? There are forces here that surpass how language turns us into an entity to ourselves. So my attention has come to the chat section. George in the chat section says hi from Melbourne, Australia. So the idea, I'll get back to this, guys, pretty much like, you know, I'm trying to simplify it. I'm trying to, you know, explain this in the simplest way. Pretty much eyes open, and when eyes open, information is accessed by an unknown viewer within, okay? This unknown viewer within is identifying at first from sight. It's like an intelligence that has been divided between the unknown observer and the known observed. You know, the observed, the observer, and then the unknown observer and the known observed, right? So it's a how can I tell you, to be a human being is to fragment the intelligence of a singularian moment into dimensions. You see, there's a duality of like our physical body being separate from the physical world. Then there's the duality of our, you can say, a non-physical mind being separate to our physical body that is being separate to the physical world. And then there's, in some sense, the relationship of the unknown with the unknown, and that's what I feel the afterlife is. You know, it's as if some people, when they fathom the afterlife, some philosophers or theologians, I mean, I don't identify as a theologian, but I would say, like, as a philosopher, you know, as someone who is not afraid to ask, you know, questions that challenge the original structure of systems. You see, life is about the known going to the unknown, and all that the afterlife could be is that the unknown experiences the unknown. And you know what's hilarious? It could also be rhythmic, right? It could be that the human species, or all these souls reincarnating in the realm from like the Buddhic perspective and whatnot, it's like we're acting like dolphins, right? It's as if the dolphin is underwater, it jumps out of water and then jumps back in the water. And then the question comes, is the dolphin that has jumped out of water the same dolphin that is swimming underwater? It's another way of saying being conscious as an object in an objective world And noticing this consciousness has led to the resolution of rendering everything as a subject, you know. I remember I saw these atheists like years ago kind of destroy these poor theists in like debate on YouTube. And I was shocked because none of the atheists took the perspective of psychology and philosophy. Do you know? It's as if, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, psychologists and philosophers need to be the intermediary translators of religious people to, you know, of immaterialist concluders to materialist concluders. But let's say during a lifetime where the known was going to the unknown, like that's the human experience, imagine that you suddenly realized that the known was unknown. Imagine this was one of the, I would say, a sort of mini enlightenment that happens for some people, not for everyone. But there's a moment in life where the person's like, I didn't choose the letters of my name. You know, it's like the person didn't have a choice to choose their name, and they didn't have a choice to choose the alphabet, and they didn't have a choice to choose how the world was moving before they got here. And we're living in that world. We're living, actually, the past is another way of saying, if we choose to extract meaning from the past, we have occupied the space where meaning from the future can be extracted. It's like a known entity that can notice the unknown, and as it experiences the unknown, it realizes the nature of understanding is unknown. And when a person becomes content with the unknown, guys, this is a very bold claim I'm saying. I am declaring, okay, that the ultimate state, the ultimate philosophy in this world is to realize the unknown is unknown. To be able to be content with that truth, it is like a supremacy activation. You know, it's as if like the potential, it's as if like, you know, man was worshipping the gods, not realizing what was looking through his eyes. You see, it's like our moments don't just belong to us. The more there's an identification with a universal intelligence, the less the person's being their name and personality and memories and imagination, and the more they are being a massive universal event taking place at the same time. And so, to wonder if we are ideas in the mind of the cosmos, it's another way of realizing we are the cosmos. You know, this whole time people thought they need to get they need to become an astronaut, you know, get in an astronaut suit, get in a spaceship, and then go explore the cosmos. It's like, who knew that the cosmos was in our eyes? And if we wondered about how our eyes are holding the world, the greatest teachings await. I am telling you, there is no, I would say that if somebody said to me, hey, Mr. Within, do you believe that there is like the greatest human teacher? Can human beings teach, you know, is there such a thing as the greatest teacher? And I will say no. This concept that we have been learning from our world is another way of saying our memory has been cherry picking value. Do you know? And the implication and the significance of truth, right? This is where the honor for it comes, right? The honor for truth surpasses the desires of artificial justice of truth. Do you know? Like, you know, it's like religions, you know, I have seen certain religious people and who are the most kindest people, and I have seen religious people that are cruel, that are vicious, that are like snakes holding rosaries. Do you know? But the idea is that when we realize intelligence is beyond the human boundary, beyond the human limits of giving it a definition, when we realize the world has a life of its own, you know what happens? From a robotical truth seeker that's like practicing like, like a robot or praying like a robot, you suddenly realize the world is alive. And it's a strange thing where if before your mind was trying to analytically access the world, it's as if from the heart you have a conversation with a living universe, right? Because there's statements that, for example, I don't know who exactly said this, but it was as if somebody said that thinking is the mind talking to itself. But I would also say thinking is how, it's another way of saying the universe is talking to itself. It's kind of, to me, fascinating how we make individualism the most important thing, but everything in life is multidimensional. Sometimes I think the only reason we are human is because we have ignored the rest and everything else other than the human idea. And the honor of the future generations, it's as if let me tell you something, guys, of what I have felt of what kind of human beings will be born. And I don't know if I'm blessed, maybe my voice will echo a couple thousand years. Children of the future generations, guys, the way they will look at 2022, they will at first kind of frown, then begin laughing. Do you know? Ever since we have become ideological entities with names and personality, we have put the intelligence of the human experience in a position where it can be judged by everything, and it's like this bizarre situation where we don't know who we are or what the human intelligence is, but we're all acting like we are, like a person dares allow themselves to feel, for example, sad and happy. It's like the person's like, I don't know where thoughts come from, and then at the same time I have emotions too. Like, what's up with that? It's like, God, give me a break. I'm trying to understand what thought is. Ultimately, it's a relationship, a direct experiential relationship with the unknown. That is the essence of spirituality or self-inquiry. The best word you can replace the concept of spirit with is like self-awareness. That's really what it is. When our awareness expands, more dimensions of information are present. When more dimensions of information are present, the free will has a greater buffet to select from, right? And in some sense, the hunger of the mind orchestrates to its newest dimension, right? I don't know if, probably we can create some sort of theory or law here, or develop some law here where it's as if it's like, just like the body has a sort of survival, just like the genetics want to survive in the fittest way, it's as if the mind wants to experience the new. Like a reason for survival is to, it's like okay, let's say the reason we evolved is because we wanted to survive, and now let's say you ask the evolutionary biological entity, why did you survive? Why are you lingering around in a changing world, right? Like, what purpose can a changing world have, right? It's either you ride the waves, or in some sense, it's like the changeless is eluded by its change. There is an essence to our minds that I will tell you, it's like it has never moved. Like the body moves, right? The thoughts come and go, but the witness within has never moved. It's as if it's not even in this dimension to move. The example would be like, imagine somebody has a remote control car, right? And they're in on a balcony, and they're, let's say somebody has a drone and they're on a balcony and they're flying their drone in the sky, or whatever, right? And it's as if imagine the drone was a metaphor for how human beings had popped out of the void, right? And it's as if imagine the drone became conscious, and the drone's like, what's moving me, right? And realizes that it's an intelligence beyond
what it is constituted from, and it's an intelligence in a place beyond its reach. You see, it's as if it's like the person is looking at the source of the intelligence of the cosmos and being like, what's the deal here? Are we here to know more, or are we here to notice the unknown? And the bizarre thing is that inevitably, after all simulations of knowledge, after the end of the war of wars, the end of all wars, the end of all dualistic simulations, trying to infinitize, trying to be infinite, right? That's all that a chaotic and ordered creature can do. To, in some sense, transcend its limits, and physically that becomes immortality, mentally that becomes eternal realization. And eternal realization is bizarre in the sense, like when Plato says time is the moving image of eternity, the creatures that are in time, it's as if simultaneously on the other side of time, the unchanging is being, right? The nature of being is way more mysterious than what we do. What we do is limited to memory, or it's limited to the potential of memory, which we call imagination, for example. It's very symmetrical, I think. I think that's the clue. I think that's the biggest clue, right? The human being is not perfectly symmetrical, but when you look at like your hands, like whoever you are listening to me, look at your hands, right? And place your hands like how would I say it? That thing, for example, like connect your palms and connect all your fingertips, like the right index finger with the left index finger, the thumb with the thumb, and you'll be fascinated to realize it's as if like this symmetry, there's a sort of outline, symmetrical outline to the human experience. And symmetry is like how the wings of a bird flap at the same time, right? And I don't know, but I feel like, sharing something poetic about the advanced civilization, that it's as if when our objective bodies and subjective minds can in a synchronized way move, I think that is not just the origin of skill, but it is like the destiny of all the incomplete is to be complete. And you know what it is? That's actually what's going on this planet. Creatures are being born on a rock in the middle of nowhere. They're looking at they're first entertaining the known variables. It's as if young children, you don't tell them Santa isn't real, right? For example, on Christmas, you don't tell a child Santa isn't coming because it's not real. Why? Because you want it's like when the human being is born, first they go through a training of interacting with the known variables of their reality, and then after you've interacted with the known variables, you eventually go to the unknown. And it's the same thing where after you have understood the physics, let's say it was a finite universe, we understood the physics of this finite universe, right? And all that would be left is to go beyond the physics, or that which comes after the physics. Metaphysics is the destiny of physics, and physicists right now are ignoring it. Yeah, right. It's like the theoretical physicist, shouts at let's say the religious fundamentalist and says, you're believing in a fiction, And so, at the same time, the theoretical physicist, goes into the, let's say, sits on the table, gets a piece of paper, and starts theorizing, right? The nature, really what is going on is imagination is moving reality, and then it's moving reality in a way to consider imagination doesn't exist. That means I am telling you, if all those people who say imagination is not real, imagination is 3/4 real, 1/4 unreal, right? And it has a very significant role on this planet, because imagination is how consciousness receives, like an antenna, the signals of, instead of thinking an observable universe and an unobservable universe. You know, it's as if a person hears the idea of reincarnation, and then it's like, you know, everybody's been reincarnating like an endless, you know, like at times from the Buddhist perspective, you know, unlimited reincarnations taking place endlessly. And so it's like the person who's considering themselves, imagine this, guys. You know, people think Buddhists are just like peaceful and, you know, gentle and like maybe like weak people, but they don't realize the inner strength of Buddhism. Or even the ancient yogis or any tradition that's realized that there has been a hidden past to our known beginnings. You know? So imagine you no longer judge yourself based on, let's say, the world you were born in from from the beginning of your birth in this earth, on this earth, you know. It's as if for a second you consider that some part of the intelligence that you have been has in some sense journeyed through the eyes of endless variations of creaturehood. That's the, you know, those people who believe in past lives, or if they truly experientially have memories of other moments, it's as if like they are you know, it's like, to me, talking to a person who knows their past life is equivalent to like finding a time traveler's notebook, you know? There's a scene, guys, in the movie Gladiator, and this is one of my most favorite scenes in all of cinema. You know, and it's at the beginning of the movie Gladiator, where I think you see it in the deleted, I think it's a deleted scene, or it's one of those scenes where I had like the special DVD version of the movie Gladiator. But what I'm trying to tell you is there's this scene where you just see, it's like the beginning of the movie, and you see Maximus, the main character, he's gone to this river, you know, and I don't know if he's like, you know, he's, you know, rubbing dirt on his hands to in some sense remind himself where all life goes, right? And for a second he's just looking at this tree, he's by this peaceful river before he goes into the chaos of the battlefield, and a bird suddenly lands on a branch in front of him, and the main character smiles, as if like Sun Tzu in The Art of War said, the general that was aligned with heaven is the general that wins. Right? Back in the day, generals were like, had a metaphysical perception of the battle. See, you know what I have noticed? The purpose of life has to be, you know, it's like we may not know the exact answer, but it has to do with reception and expression. That means really the meaning in life comes from how we're experiencing it, and it's pretty much how we're being moved by it and how we move it, right? Me telling, you know, human beings on Earth to build an advanced civilization is equivalent to like, you know, the periodic table discovering its most, let's say, complex formation. You know, on some level, I cannot ignore that. Just like, you know, when I was a kid, I have a twin brother, and we would play in a garden. Okay, and I remember I would lift up this rock, and there were like a bunch of insects just living under the rock, because like the rock was in the soil and the sun didn't hit that part of the rock, and it was cool, right? So it's like when it's a sunny day, some insects are like, all right, time to go inside. You know, they go underneath rocks. You know? And so, just like I remember lifting up this rock and seeing insects living underneath it, an insect under a rock. Similarly, we are like, you know, the same thing.
Instead of being under a rock, we're on it. You know, that's the privilege of the small and the big. It gets to experience the big again. You know, that's the microcosm has again an ability to access the macrocosm, right? That means it's like some people look at death and they're like, oh my God, you know, everything's going away. And some people look at death as if it is like literally like the completion of individualism. It's as if it's like some individual force walked and roamed this earth. You know, it cared for the worlds of its eyes, and then eventually it realized, you know, the portal beyond conception. You see, I have this strange view that strength has an inconceivable source. What really moves matter is not per se just the brain. It's you know what it is? It's like like divinity is another way of saying a greater mind was paying attention to Earth. You know, something else. It's as if like right now, if I ask myself, you know, who does my biological body belong to? Okay, there is the idea of me, my name, and my personality, but at the same time, it also belongs to how the forces of nature are keeping it. You know, man has an interaction with here I'll go to a new page. Man has an interaction with pretty much in 3 dimensions, right? So I'm this guy saying, hey, the human being, you know, there's a trio to life. There is the relationship of the self, or what am I doing? There's the relationship of self with self. There's the relationship of self with the species. Or another way I could write this is self with others. And then there's a relationship of self with world. Okay? Most human beings are occupied in one of these categories. I mean, seriously, when you look at human behavior, you know, people are their attention's either on their self, their attention is either on others, or their attention is on the world, which is holding everything, right? Those people who are, I would say, intellectually street smart, they actually go first into the relationship of the self with the world, and then self with others, and then they come. So pretty much, this is okay here. Pretty much, let me see if I can move this. Wow, this notepad is something else. Okay, so pretty much I'm gonna write this. We have materialism. The cause is an object. The effect is a subject. That's pretty much materialism. And then we have immaterialism, which the cause is a subject, and the effect is an object. Now, this relationship of, you know, pretty much a human being, we see it, a human being has a relationship with itself, it has a relationship with other intelligent variables in the realm, and then it has a relationship with the world. So the relation, pretty much an immaterialist, this in the future, guys, immaterialists will be called unknownists. So for example, I'm an unknownist at heart. Knowledge, it's like, for me, in a changing world, belief is like, doesn't make sense to me. I'm not saying faith doesn't make sense, I'm saying belief doesn't make sense to me. Because it's like, it's like belief is like we're treating the world like a photograph, But the world is a movie. It's changing. It has endless frames. In every moment, you can look at every moment in so many different ways, right? Right now, even me giving this talk, do you know how many different points I could have made in this moment? It's just the nature of the mind that in the inner realms, it sees something. We are tunneling through our memories as a sort of witness beyond the earthly dimension, beyond the physical dimension. It's like the mind is a bridge, and we wonder what is it a bridge to, or between. It is a bridge between the known and the unknown. Imagine somebody would say, I have so much knowledge. Now in the future, they're going to say, I have so much unknowledge. It's like, I am very, very, very unknowledgeable. The unknown is beautiful, guys. The unknown, any person who directly experiences the unknown, let me tell you what happens. If you are honest and authentic through that experience, you will be gifted. Do you know what it is? Life is not, it's like our eyes don't just open once when we're born. Our eyes open every day and every moment until we somehow snap out of, the classification of all our memories through the subjective context of time. And it's, what it is? It's like a person who was looking for truth gets tired of the journey, and then in some sense it's a sort of, how can I tell you, it's like when the honest dimensions of the soul activate, the confidence for action is instantaneous. Because in honesty, the person is trusting reality. In dishonesty, the person has assumed everything should be distrusted. Right? When I look at, for example, evil and corruption, I'm like, who has the time for evil? We're a species on a rock in the middle of nowhere. Right? Who has the time to go like everything is chaos, right? It's as if, like, let's say all those anarchists who felt like they had a reason to destroy the world, I'll tell you, you don't understand. Chaos was in the room before order. Order is the new development. Order is the new event. It's as if the birthright of order in chaos was the manifestation of a cosmos where creatures in this cosmos not only notice the cosmos but notice its edgelessness. It's as if some people say, where did the idea of infinity come from? I'll tell you, it came from the sky because we couldn't see its edge. Can you imagine aliens, this is a hypothetical sci-fi, hilarious scenario I'm just saying right now, but imagine in the future, the aliens land on the planet, diplomatic, very enlightened aliens, right? And these aliens come and these aliens are let's say having a moment where all the news stations of the world are showing the world leaders have gone to go shake the hands with the alien, right? And so imagine the alien somehow learns our language instantly and begins communicating, let's say. And the alien says, we are peaceful, enlightened, liberated beyond the suffering of conception beings, right? It's as if imagine, okay, here, I'll animate it. Imagine glowing, very tall beings from the Andromeda galaxy arrive. The Andromeda galaxy is in the poetry that at least I have extended forth, drawn forth in these Mr. Within talks, in my own science fiction development of contexts, like I write science fiction, in my science fiction, the Andromeda Galaxy is like the big brother of the Milky Way galaxy. Do you know? Or in some sense is a guardian of the Milky Way galaxy. You know, it's like, you know, people can have siblings, you know, why not galaxies? So imagine these enlightened aliens come down to Earth and the world leaders are like, oh my god, these aliens are enlightened, you know, we can't let them know we have war and stuff. So imagine all the world leaders, they shake hands with the aliens and they say, you know, we are enlightened too. So, you know, trying to build common ground with another life form, you know. An extraterrestrial life form, and it's like, yeah, we're pretty enlightened too, you know. Sometimes, you know, we're a bit lazy, but we're pretty enlightened, you know. And the aliens are like, nah, man, nah. Imagine we tell the aliens we're enlightened too, and the aliens are like, no, you guys aren't enlightened. You know, the aliens like, why are you lying right now? You know, it's like, I'm an extraterrestrial, you know, just be honest. You know, guys, I think in the future, I've said so many stories in these talks that are similar to this, like so many example thought experiments, that I think I'm gonna, you know, maybe write a bunch of like, you know, a collection of short stories of all the different ways that extraterrestrial contact could happen. I think that would be like a huge advancement in science fiction, right? How will the future, you know, remind us that we are there? Or we are going there? Anyways, back to this. Materialists, yeah, materialism moves this way, okay? And immaterialism moves this way, okay? Sorry guys, I messed this up. It should be the other way. Okay, here, I'll fix it. I didn't need to erase the middle one. Okay. Now it's correct, alright? So the materialistic perspective is like, world was here first, you know. Then there's others here, you know. The psychology of the socio-psycho-cultural entity. And for immaterialists, you know, and then they're going to the mystery of the self. For immaterialists, they're starting with the self. The yogi was like, all right, before I rely on the information of a changing world, let me see where is this information going to. That means it's not a person, you know, let's say an artist is someone who's fascinated by their senses, right, by their sensory perception. And I would say it's as if now you become fascinated by what has been using the senses this whole time, as if the free will has been, the word free will has been a mask for an invisible movement. You know, and so when human beings wonder about its true nature, when it comes to field activity, inner field activity, like if I was giving a workshop on this, I would pretty much tell people that anybody who develops an ability where you can, just like how you put, like right now there's a cup of coffee here, I put the cup of coffee on the table and I let go. If you can sit in a sort of stillness where it's like you're just putting your body on the ground and you just watch. Just like a person goes into a movie and watches a 2-hour movie, imagine the person who's meditating for 2 hours is just sitting there watching how the whole moment, everything, every factor, every moving factor in the moment, right? Because what is the glow and the beauty of hope, guys. Hope, it's reanimation, right? Why is the concept of the resurrection in Christianity such a deep emotional idea, right? Because it's in some sense a return of ability. It's, to me, like, this might sound, I'm I don't, pretty much I'm a person who, if somebody says, are you religious, I'll be like, I don't believe language holds truth, it only points to it, right? So I don't believe, like, if somebody gave me any book, I wouldn't start worshiping that book. To me, it's like if the book is pointing to a film, a hidden film, right? Books to me are like films if you read them fast, It's the journey from world to self and from self to world. If somehow, let's say, human beings had the most successful outer realm life, and let's say they've also had a very successful inner realm life, so it's as if their body and mind have honorably lived in the realm in regards to how they've served, the future of their species. And so let's say all of that is perfect, and now the person's like, okay, I've done everything. It's like the role of the lifetime has been played. Now, after a person completes their role, right, just like we have, like, for example, what do you call it, like, the educational system calls them, like, gifted students, right? Similarly, imagine there was, like, gifted mystics, okay, or gifted souls, not gifted people, right? And the gifted soul would be, in some sense, in the shortest time, they have actually completed, the mind's intent and body, right? Like right now, even though I haven't finished giving these 10,000 talks, but I have finished what the talks intended to achieve, right? I don't know, like I have this feeling, probably like, either like new dimensions in the outer realms. Pretty much it's like where attention is being called forth towards. That's really it, right? The unknown is not like a relationship of a personality with space, with the world. Like that, the unknown is something that we can't touch with conception. It's another way of saying the world is acting like it has a mind of its own. That's what divinity would be translated as to a secular audience, for example. You see, the human mind gives us an ability to amplify anything, and the nature of this is called concentration, right? For example, something about here I'll talk about, like, something interesting in religion. In religious ideological systems, is that the concept of prayer was as if like, you know what it is? It's as if like the old prophets were like, all right, guys, there's an inconceivable source to the world, and 5 times a day, or how many times a day, or in whatever format or culture or system, it's as if we're going to pay attention to the inconceivable. Like, for example, in the Islamic tradition, I was raised in Iran in my youth, and for example, when you go to a mosque, right, like you see in movies, they show how life is like in a church, right? But like you don't see movies of showing like the movie scene is not taking place in a cathedral, it's taking place in a mosque or something. Like, people don't see this, but really what is going on, like equivalent to the behavior of, let's say, Christians in a church, the behavior of Muslims in a mosque, it's as if there's something called, like, they cleanse themselves with it. Like, it's a sort of cleaning process with water, okay? And then the person's trying to go into the purest state of mind and then go pray to their creator. Like, somebody who truly prays is not praying with the masses, right? It's like the person is like in their own zone of prayer. But the whole idea was like as if the attention needs to go on the inconceivable, and what strategies take us there, right? I sometimes, from the theological lens, from the theological perspective, I sometimes think like what would have Adam and Eve's reaction have been after they, fell from heaven, right? Imagine like how Adam and Eve would talk like after they were banished from heaven and, from paradise, right? It's as if, imagine how confused Adam and Eve would be. They'd be like, wait a minute, so we were created and then we were put in a place and then we had to make a choice and somehow we made the wrong choice and now we have to fill out a test, right? Live life as a test, It's as if in some sense religion is trying to get the approval of an inconceivable universal and inconceivable, cosmic being. Do you know what I'm saying? There is reference to that, guys. You see, the idea of beauty is a universal. Just like somebody says, it's like, what does the color green mean? What does the color blue mean? It's like it's just a universal. It is what it is. It's just a universal like it has a sort of universal being, right? Like it's like people can disagree on ideological systems and what is truth, but people won't disagree on like the color blue. You know what I'm saying? Beauty anything can be seen as beautiful if the proper context is given, and anything can be seen the opposite if the person gives that context. Like imagine somebody, like let's say there's a beautiful person, a beautiful physical being, and then a very ugly mental being, right? And it's as if somebody says, hey, beautiful physical being that's mentally ugly, right? It's why are you, for example, being cruel and violent to the other ones or something, right? And then it's as if like you realize our karma is it's the context we have accepted for the space of our meaning, for how our meaning happens. Right? It's another way of saying that person who's mentally ugly is that the world is an ugly place to them. Somebody who is, let's say, mentally beautiful, the world is a beautiful place to them. And if you were like a disciple of Rene Descartes back in the day, you'd be like, man, this whole time I've been thinking I'm just, what I see in the mirror, but the mind is existing in an independent dimension beyond the movements of the body. Right? It's another way of saying it's like our body is being in one dimension where atoms are chilling, and then there's our mind is being in a dimension in multiple dimensions, right? Or let me tell you how it is right now. The mind is because we are using language to identify as a sort of subject behind our eyes. That subject is bound to duality, right? Duality is like the blueprint of language. Now, if language reaches an unknown point, right, what happens? The mind has a capability to not only acknowledge how it's being a self to itself, not acknowledge how others are being to itself, but it reaches the point where, in some sense, it acknowledges the world which encompasses everything. It's as if, imagine in a parallel universe, two siblings got in a fight, and the parents were like, you guys have to love each other, your family, And so imagine it's a parallel universe, right? And imagine one of the siblings is like, I don't want to love, all the parallel universes of this person, It's they ask someone, imagine imagine, they tell somebody, you're wrong, man, and the person's like, sure, I could be wrong in this parallel universe, but I'm probably right in another parallel universe, so you never know I'm wrong, you're right, See, that's the era of multidimensionality. The future's going to be hilarious, guys, I'm telling you. Pretty much I feel how the human species on Earth will build an advanced civilization that it's going to be, I don't know how to say it. It's like
it's gonna be like filled with laughter. How would I tell you? It's like the more advanced we become, the more we chill out and the more we see how much the past generations were just freaking out, reacting to like what life has to mean. Right now, whoever's listening to me, we're very blessed. We're living in the information age. It's another way of saying we don't have to go physically explore the world to get to know the world. But if we were to explore an invisible world, like this is such a unique topic, I really don't know how many people on this planet actually care to understand the invisible. You know, I think most people they treat the invisible as it's a sort of storytelling. You know, it's a sort of like, you know, sometimes I look at, you know, I mean, I don't really care that much, but sometimes I feel modern esoteric societies are playing like they're like being childish. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if the conclusion of any spiritual system is not the ability to realize the advanced is possible, that system hasn't cared for its own evolution, right? Like, sometimes I think about like like let's say there was a group of people running the planet, right? Imagine the planet was a giant company and a group of people were running it, okay? Now, in a parallel universe of Earth, imagine the whole civilization was structured like a company. Now imagine, you know, the heads of the company. They have to ask themselves, okay, you know, 8 billion employees, what do we do, right? And in some sense, it's still a sort of, believe it or not, it's kind of like what the communists call, like, it's as if Karl Marx discovered something so important, but it went unheard. Do you know? And let me tell you what it is. It's about whether the person's perception on life is prioritizing existential life sensitivity over sort of emotional, abstract pleasure. I'm trying to think, like, if there was a company with 8 billion employees, the leaders of the company would be like, all right, employees, the idea is win-win till the end of time. Do you know? And so it would be as if 8 billion employees would not hate going to work, you know? Like, there wouldn't be psychological suffering in existence. It would be more like the attitude would be as if, why not get to see what the most advanced humanity is. This is such a perfect argument that the most egotistical beings will see it make sense, right? It's like the dictators, like, yeah, maybe if I give freedom to the people, like, they're gonna build a better nation which I'll rule. Like, do you see, like, the ego, even it verifies in the ego, the idea of the advanced civilization is the universal destiny of the species. And there is an excitement behind that, which it doesn't matter if you're saying I'm a materialist. A materialist is a changing world. It's as if a person can have the same beliefs. Let's say they have a belief one day and then they sleep and wake up and still have the same belief. But guess what? You have changed. And if you have changed, how is it the same belief? Heraclitus says no man steps into the same river twice, and it's not the same river, you know, and it's not the same man, something like that. So similarly, every moment of conscious experience of existence is its own universe of being. You know, it's strange. It's as if worlds, what thoughts are, or how worlds are are acting in the spotlight of human attention, the human's attention. Welcome everyone. Feel free to write down where in the world you're listening from. I think that would be fascinating too.
I mean, technically the title of the episode, An Idea in the Mind of the Cosmos. The mind is a human invention, the concept of it, right? But what it actually is, again, is like a consent. It's like the dimensions of this world are like an onion, and each layer of the onion is technically the onion. You know, this world on some level has no obligation to explain itself to us. There is no 100% certainty ever in anything. And if there is never 100% certainty, it's another way of saying that the human mind has to, every day of its life, reconsider the unknown. There is this idea of the shaman, and there's this book from Carlos Castaneda that somebody recommended, and commented in the chat section of like a talk, one of my talks years ago, and I remember I had heard it before, right? It's as if like if a person takes the shamanic approach, is the shaman waking up every day and analyzing everything and then making a decision, or is the shaman trying to just be in a state where they can notice how another dimension is moving? What the logos is like a hidden reality that is happening the same time as we are. To me, this may sound strange, but I have theorized it in two ways. I would say in one way, you can say what thoughts are like just like the sun's light beams hit Earth, like there's waves passing through the planet, and these become kind of like, underlying influential factors of how like the human species behaves, right? Like it's as if like just like lights in our eyes, it's like there's so many different dimensions to be considered. It's like you can say if the human being is at a right, like the body's at the wrong temperature, their psychology shifts. It's like there's so many dimensions that have to be stabilized, and then we can be like, properly the human archetype. And then the journey of the human archetype is that the moment it sees beyond itself, it is that beyond that is knowing itself. How would I say what cannot be said? Some people think, I wanted to become a poet, but I'll tell you, it's as if like, for some people, poetry is not a choice. It's just that you realize the edge of that which is known in the perception. And then when you see the unknown, it's like, imagine, an astronaut staring at the abyss of space. Imagine a captain of a ship, journeying through the oceans at night, where there's only the moonlight and, the roar of waves, You see, I think I honestly think one of the emotions that activates greatness in any dimension is just this ability for whatever that is happening to go into a mini pause for one instant. The being pauses, and it's as if it's kind of, how would I tell you, it's as if like the cosmos is happening, and like the brain is like, all right, stop moving, right? And it's as if for a second the outer realms keep moving. The outer realms,
the nature of the outer realms is different, but in the inner realms, the meaning, the language systems, everything that has gone to, to be sort of the hidden face of the mask of the object, It's this ability to notice the unknown, and at first there may be reactions to leave the unknown, but those, you know what it is? It's as if like it's the evolution of fearless awareness. Fearless awareness is a sort of liberative force. So it's pretty much this attitude where the person is staring at the infinite, and it's as if the emotional dimensions they are watching. The objective dimensions, subjective dimensions, as if a pure alignment of attention in the unknown of all dimensions of one's being. The unknown is like the hammer of the blacksmith that in some sense was trying to, through the electromagnetic, presence of the earth, in some sense straighten the hammer. Sometimes I feel, creaturehood is just pretty much like some. It's, what it is. It's as if, some people connect the mother archetype to the planetary mind, but I would connect in some sense the inventor, not a mad inventor, but like an inventor from the future, right? And the manifestation is like the world is so creative that we are here talking about creativity. It's like you see what has happened, right? It's as if we have thought the gods were walking on clouds, then we thought the gods never existed, and now we are wondering what is moving in the void, and then the goosebumps of, I would say, the release of suffering happens. It's as if it's like the person not only has to not ignore suffering, but you have to release suffering. It's as if something like, how would I tell you, suffering, it's like it can only be released when you see what the future deserves is greater than your past. That is like the road, like a time travel, like a time traveler's road. The future is in some sense here, but it is here in mind. The present is here in body, and the past used to be here in love. It's like our ancestors, stand in our inner realms honoring us. Like, imagine you were like an inventor on this planet, okay? And imagine all the inventors that had ever lived were like standing behind you, watching what you would do. Do you know? It's like the great performance of freedom in a world that never needed to be chained. It's like our freedom is our ability for our attention to accept the potential of the presence. Why do we have minds? It's as if like, why is there the unknown? And why do we have imagination, which is how we can interact with the unknown? Imagination, earlier in this episode, I said imagination is 3/4 real. Let me explain to you how I'm concluding that. So, there's something that the viewers should know. Oh my God. It's like true creativity, is how the inner realms have become a sort of, infinite engine. Really what life is it's forces moving through forces.
It's like a wind moving between the branches. The branches are the material realm, and that which is moving through it, that is what we actually are, right? It's like it's too much for human beings to understand, right? That the biggest conspiracy theory on earth is the idea of self. You know, to the mystics, that's how it was. It's like the mystic was like, am I in a dream right now, bro? You know, and so you know, it's like really what creativity is like angels in the inner realms have come to, in some sense, keep the order, you know, have come to, you know, let's say, it's like the angels of the future fighting the demons of the past. The demons of the past, it's like desire is a loop. Like for the Buddha, probably desire was a way of like kind of entering a sort of hell loop, right? But when I say desire, that means unconscious reactive want. Do you know? Like we are on some level like evolutionary animals, like even though we name ourselves and, you know, we speak, but there's a wilderness to us. Nature has a wild side that can never be dominated. Aristotle has this idea where this is known as Aristotle's 4 causes in philosophy. Okay, this is very important. You can see it as if like it's like a strategy or like an algorithm or an approach to how something is real, right? So these 4 causes, hang on, let me see. There we go. So if the viewers can look at the screen, what I'm going to post here is going to explain everything. So Aristotle's 4 causes, right? Pretty much Aristotle's like there's 4 ways that something is having a causal position in existence in the moment. One is the material cause. What kind of material? What is it made of, right? It's as if we look, okay, here, I'll give a perfect example. Right now there's a coffee cup in front of me. Okay, and let's say I'm like, you know, trying out a sort of Aristotelian approach, and I'm like, okay, let me see, how does this cup exist? How is existence being a causal representation of this cup, right? So it's as if some person's looking at a cup and being like, how's this existing right now, right? So one way I look at what is this cup made of? It's made of from glass, right? So that's its material cause. That means the concept of a cup, you know, this cup I'm seeing, it exists because it has content, it has matter, right? Particles are being the glass that it is, right? So it's like the particles are the glass, right? Now are the cup. Now, another way I could look at this cup and be like, how is it existing? I could say, it, like, forget what it's made of. The cup has a geometry. I'm seeing the circle at the top, and I'm seeing the whole geometry of the cup, right? Let's say, for example, it was a cylindrical cup, right? So the person is looking at the shape of something and being like, okay, because it has shape, it exists. So first one was because it has matter. There's material there, it exists. Now the second approach is because it has shape. This is called the formal cause. First one was material cause, second formal cause.
And so when it comes to the efficient cause, now another way I can wonder why is this cup existing, or how is it existing, is I ask myself, how does it have a shape? That means if I'm saying in the formal cause, like Aristotle's like, okay, this has a shape, but now you wonder, why does the shape exist, right? And Aristotle came to the efficient cause, which is another way of saying what or who made it. That means this exists because somebody created the cup, right? That's another way where you could see something existing, right? The fourth, the final cause, is what is its purpose? And it's as if this cup exists because someone's going to drink water or coffee out of it one day. Do you see? So these are Aristotle's four causes. Aristotle was pretty much like, imagine he gave goggles to his disciples and they could just interpret, how something exists, like the causal position through this filter in these like four quadrants, Now, earlier when I said imagination is 3/4 real, 1/4 unreal, and reality is 4/4 real, I was using Aristotle's four causes. And I'm saying, okay, the human being here, I'll do this. The four causes, we have the material cause. I need people to actually look at the screen here. Okay, so we have the material cause. We have the formal cause. And three, we have the efficient cause. We have the final cause. Beautifully worded. Guys, Aristotle was like, a genius of another dimension. Now, we have these four causes. And we have the idea of imagination. We have imagination. And we have reality. Another way of saying what we're considering as unreal, or here, I won't give that first. Let's say we have imagination. Okay, here, I'll make it interesting. Before I define imagination, I'm going to just say we have imagination and reality, and we want to apply the four Aristotelian causes to them, okay? So we look at reality, and when I'm, for example, looking at this cup in front of me, right, this cup I was using as an example, material cause, like the cup is made of, is in some sense, it's real, it's made of glass, okay? The cup is real because it's made of glass. The cup is real because it has, let's say, circular outline, circular, cylindrical outline.
I look at the efficient cause, the, glass maker. The glass maker is the efficient cause. And then I look at its final cause, drinking water. That's how I know this glass is real if I was Aristotle, right? Now, I want to close, like for example, close your eyes and imagine like a glass hovering in the air, and imagine this glass that's hovering in front of you in the air is like spinning around itself, So that now we want to wonder, okay, is that imagination real? We wonder about the final cause. What's the purpose of imagination? For consciousness to use it and see it, right? So in some sense, it's like visualization is the visualization. Here, I'll say new visualization is like the purpose. The efficient cause of imagination, that it was made by, let's say, the self, that means, or free will. That's the efficient cause. The glass maker, the person imagining, this cup, like let's say a cup of coffee hovering in the air. That's like, the efficient cause is there. It's like the free will is the efficient cause. And the formal cause, sure, when a person closes their eyes and they're looking at their imagination, that image exists. Like right now, when I told everybody, imagine this cup hovering in the air, I was seeing actually this cup hovering in the air in the inner realms, right? It's like the imagination being sort of like another world overlaid on the world, So, in some sense, in regards to the formal cause, it has shape. Right, so the floating cup is the content, the shape of it. But now, can I grab this floating cup I've imagined? No, it doesn't have a material cause. Doesn't have a material cause. Do you see what I'm saying? So, in some sense, imagination, oh my god. Now, let's say So, final conclusion, only 1/4 of the human experience is a simulation. samsara is 1/4 of actually what is going on. The mystery of creatures beyond their minds, waits. Evolution, just like this picture of the video, is like evolution is the car. Free will is the person standing in front of the door. The door is the future. Imagine somebody, a tourist, let's say a time traveler walking on the street, right, and asking someone for directions and being like, how do I get to the future? It's like, what's the address? Where do I have to walk to, to get to the future? What does the species expect from itself? There's so many ways we can look at life and perceive dimensions of it. Our ancestors believed in gods, and the modern generations are like, I don't believe in God, but subconsciously we're acting like it. That's the whole point of greed. It's as if the purpose of psychology is to point to how there are inner workings to life. There's ways that the moment is experiencing its own existence that are conditional and unconditional. It's like being a human being is like a tree where its roots are in the soil. Now for the human being, it's like a conceivable consciousness rooted in the inconceivable. And so, but if we identify as our bodies, we fear the temporary. If we identify as minds, it's like we are blissed out in eternity. Right? That's the whole thing of the idea of Satchidananda, which means conscious existence is bliss. That means it's that moment in the lifetime where the person realizes all that life has been an instantaneous moment where consciousness and existence have been occurring together. And when you notice this in an instant, right, you realize they have no purpose. An instantaneous moment has no purpose in time. You need 2 moments, at least 2 points, to have sort of an arrow drawn in to go forth in the world. But if we wonder about if the divine could be an instantaneous moment, the closest thing to how a creature can psychologically access the inconceivable. Imagine in the future, there's going to be Buddhist teachers who are going to look at their students and be like, all right, kids, last week you had to all wonder about your past lives, who you could have been and all of that, right? And now the teacher's like, all right, this week we're going to wonder about who you're going to be in the future. If you reincarnated 1,000 times again, what is the point? Why is attention, dabbling with unconsciousness, right? It's like, why has attention come to be, right? The purpose transcends any narrative or story, guys. I'm telling you, this whole time, it's like the only way we can be a person, have a personality, is we have to be a character in a sort of subjective story, right? A subjective character, a subjective, it's as if a subject is telling itself it's an object, realizing, but it's a subject. It's like we know that the mind is not an object. The mind is another way of saying how, when the soul is inside matter, you call that body. When the soul is inside space, you call that mind.
The person's like, bro, the other day I had an out of soul experience, and the person's like, what was that like? It's like, it was like an inconceivable instantaneous moment of realizing the inconceivable instantaneously exists. It always has. That all this is a game. It's like a battlefield. What is a battlefield in this sort of civilization 1.0's modernity? In the future, it's going to be a playground, right? Because human beings have been smart enough to shift their circumstances where their greatest ability projects. You see, it's like, I'm telling you, imagine like somebody creating a giant robot. Imagine like you're an inventor of a giant robot, and like somehow this giant robot for the first time gets a chance to first a pilot inside the giant robot to like maneuver the robot. And the inventor is, even though he's watching the battlefield and he has morals and all that, but the inventor's like, my God, look at that robot I built. What is it? How's it gonna move? What's it gonna do next? What variables did I not consider in my equations? Right? But from the pilot's perspective, it's like, I'm a badass machinery, I'm gonna go defeat the enemy, But the inventor is just looking at the geometry of like that. It's like that same feeling of a giant robot for the first time in human history standing up and taking at least 1 or 2 steps. Like that would be like as historic as when human beings planted a flag on the moon. Or planted a moon on the flag. I don't know. That same fascination and goosebump moment where everybody is just like shocked, like, oh my God, the first giant robot ever, like, guys, the background music I'm listening to, I'm going to try to fix this for the next episode so I can just play the background music and people can hear it. But for now, I could just post it in the live stream window and people can there we go. That's the song I'm listening to as I'm giving that talk. Like, if people are wondering about the inner rhythms I'm entertaining, the type of waves I'm surfing as I'm doing this talk. Music is world animation to some people. The thing is that it's really, it's this strange scenario, honestly, guys, when it comes to like the truth of everything. And first we have to first accept that we're worthy enough to wonder about this. What is the truth of all truths, right? It's as if like the moment the human being realizes they're in a simulation, they're like, wait a minute, so you're telling me if the whole world is a simulation, everything inside it is a simulation? And I will tell you, what the simulation is inside is not a simulation. Freedom is not a shape. It is unconditional. It's as if the person tried, it's like back in the day, imagine like a heroic warrior tried to compete with a god. Or there's this incredible love story, oh my God, I gotta tell people this. Like this Greek mythology love story that history has recorded. Excuse me. Okay, guys, I'm gonna tell you. So, by the way, excuse the additional noises.
I'll begin by saying that there's this love story of in Greek mythology of these two figures, the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. So I'll read this for you here. The story of Orpheus and Eurydice is one of the most beautiful and sad stories in Greek mythology. In the story, Orpheus, the greatest poet and musician in history, tries to reclaim his wife Eurydice, who has passed away. To save his loved one, Orpheus will travel to the underworld and back. So guys, I'll like, that's how much it's written here, but I'll tell you the story, right? So pretty much, back in the day, they believed in, like, more worlds than one, right? And so it was as if to Orpheus, he was in love with his wife, and his wife had passed away. That means it's like no longer in this dimension. So it's another way of saying this story of Orpheus and Eurydice is the first story of the first person who went into another dimension to get something and come back out of that dimension, right? That means it's like, he was looking for his wife's soul. He was in some sense like, that's the power of love. It's like the activation of souls. So what happens is Orpheus goes down, and evidently, like, he's such a next level musician that he gets to a situation where whatever's going on in the underworld, I think Hades is like, all right, man, you can take your wife from the underworld and go to Earth, but under one condition. If you choose to leave the underworld, you can't look back, right? You can't look back at the underworld, right? So Orpheus has managed to find his wife's soul, and in some sense, he's trying to get out of it and come back to, like, come back home, to Earth, right? And so what happens in the story is so intense, guys, because Orpheus is about to get to the exit of the underworld with his wife, but suddenly he looks back. That was the condition. He looks back, and you know why the underworld and suddenly his wife gets taken back by the underworld, and you know why that happened? Because Orpheus, in his faith of his truth, to get out of the underworld with his wife, right? In some sense, the moment he looked back, it was as if he told Hades he still had a desire for the underworld. That means it was as if he liked the underworld when he looked back, And so that's the tragedy of this, mind-blowing story from Greek mythology, right? That in some sense, it's like, the greatest performance before the stage breaks away. Excuse me. What can I say? Is the cosmos alive? Are we its thoughts? Can a thought think? Is the future important? And how can the future arrive if the past still wants to stay here? Imagine all religious institutions on the planet, they stopped the whole, let's say, dissemination and preaching movement. Imagine preachers stopped and preachers were like, we want to see, for example, like, how would I tell you? I'm trying to say a situation where, ideology is not forced upon people, but people look at an ideology from a distance and it's so beautiful to them that they walk towards it, right? Like right now, we are honestly in a hilarious phase of human civilization where we're experiencing dishonest marketing, right? In the future, people are going to realize the honest is as fascinating as the dishonest, Truth can be way more alluring than, in some sense, a simulation's grip. What holds us are the forces of nature. And what holds the forces of nature is the ability of our mind to generate meaning by, it's as if like the mind looks at what's happening in real time and then what it can't see beyond as a reaction to the unobservable universe. Imagination is projected in the moment. As if like let's say somebody is looking at reality, like I was looking at this coffee cup and I'm like, okay, I'm looking at the coffee cup, I'm seeing it, I'm touching it, I'm seeing how it's real, I'm picking it up, right? So it's like there's like this physical existential, how do I say it? It's like if I wonder beyond how this coffee cup is existing to me, I am in some sense wondering about how the edge of my mind. That's the thing about philosophy, and mysticism specifically. Mysticism is not for the faint of heart. It's for those people who they are now ready to learn from the unknown. And the unknown is imagine like if the future generations had one command they wanted to give the human species. Imagine a time traveler just that represented all human beings in the future came back and found himself on, let's say, on a stage of, let's say, a concert that everybody on the planet was seeing. And imagine that time traveler was authorized to just say one word to human beings, and then in some sense it had to go back, right? So imagine like, on a global kind of broadcast of a stage, a time traveler appears and just says one word and leaves and disappears. And that word would be advance. That's it. That's the ultimate, guys, for the physical entity. For the mind, the ultimate is how it's being before it does anything. And what is the soul? The soul is the general that upon the victory of the soldiers and the commander, the body and the mind, the general just in some sense honors. It's as if your soul in the afterlife rewards your mind and rewards your body, the vision of your body. If a person has too much desires for a body, they will animate as a body, But I think those people who are conscious, like let's say the liberated bunch in history, Imagine in the future somebody creates the Enlightened Fellows Society, It's like, does everybody in this building think they're enlightened? What an enlightening realization. What can I say? What moves life is as unknown as what is known life. And so on this planet, just like we had hunter-gatherers in the outer realms, now we have reached a point where we need hunter-gatherers of the inner realms. And pretty much this is like for anybody who has lost purpose in the world, I will tell you, consider this as an option. That if a person has dishonored the past, they cannot serve the past. If they have dishonored the present, they can't serve the present. But if the future hasn't come, they haven't dishonored the future yet. You see, it's the cultivation of a momentum of how the mind is happening. Right? It's like we're honestly all pilots.
the free will is piloting in the void, in the shape of a human being, giving a podcast on a rock, as the poet Attar would say, we're like motes in the sun's beams, something like that, where it's as if we are just like a dust particle, in the vastness of I shouldn't say life on Earth, but life beyond Earth. Hunter-gatherers of the mind, that I call them the advanced communicators, human beings who realize that there is always another way to revalue any moment. It's as if like the advantage of being inside a simulation is that you can train in like simulating. It's another way of saying like imagine a being beyond. It's like a changeless witness is cultivating manifestation experience as the whole moment. On some level it's like that. It's like we're like a camera where we don't know where the camera is being live streamed. We don't know really where the origin of our thoughts is, if the brain is rendered as an antenna of some sort. If we look behind us, we see our shadow. If we look in front of us, we see the light. And a species that is not afraid of the light and darkness, a universal sector that has authorized its own, not just galactic balance, but a universal harmony. It's as if imagine there was this super happy person on the planet, and people were like, hey man, why are you super happy? And the person was like, it's like, can't you hear it? The cosmos is playing the greatest music, but it's not in sound. It's in how every moment happens. There's a beautiful geometry to the psychology of the human being. And if it realizes what it deserves and what the future, like imagine you're somebody who you're like, maybe I don't deserve an advanced civilization, but it's as if the future generations obviously do. It's like, you can imagine, like, I give these talks, humanity builds an advanced civilization at a very fast, like, just, let's say, a period of 4,000 years. Imagine it's like somebody's like Mr.Within, let's say beyond this dimension, let's say there's this question like, or here, let's say, how did human civilization advance so quickly? And imagine it was because somebody politely suggested it. I think what the educational system should be in some sense skill oriented. That means the idea is that instead of repeating the past, we repeat the past once. And it's as if all teachers begin by like, maybe let's say a teacher has a 1 hour class. In the first minute, it's pretty much like you show a picture, and then the next idea is what do we do with the picture. I think that's all teaching comes to.
everybody should buy a notebook and wonder about what their greatest fathomable self would write in it. It's another way of saying a species that prioritized efficiency and decency and naturalness over inefficiency, unnaturalness, the artificial. It's as if it's like the human being's alive once, and it's like, if life is experienced artificially, the person's going to be like, wait a minute, I thought I was here to live, right? The more the future becomes technologically oriented, the easier it's going to be to not be a body anymore. Like they say, like, do video games have a danger? It's like, no. It's like kids can play it right now. There's no big issue. But in let's say 200 years, yeah, video games are gonna be bad. And why are they gonna be bad? Because they can, in some sense, present realities where if we choose to be emotional, you know what it is? It's going to be a very strange humanity if cyberspace and virtual reality becomes a sort of part of people's lives. Let me tell you why. It's going to be a strange phase where, like, something that's ingrained in the, let's say, psychocultural entity, is that it's pretty much like we're energy without a purpose. The future generations, their purpose is going to become us. They're going to wonder about, like, oh my God, they had trees back in the day. Imagine children, who were born in space stations in the future. Like the first child born in outer space. It's like, where's that child from? It's like the birth certificate of that child would say, like, location of birth, outer space. Like, we will have children born in outer space. That's such a fascinating idea. And they will be, or even I have envisioned that the children will be born on sky cities. Imagine the first, generation of children born in sky cities. Their whole life they have been looking at the earth. From the sky, they've been wondering what life on the earth would be like, right? As if having a reverence to return, to where one's nature originally was from, right? Imagine they build houses on Mars in the future, and there's like, let's say, next level houses or like, homes and living conditions, and imagine somebody's living on Mars, right? And then they're thinking for a second, they're like, but something doesn't feel like home yet, right? Imagine like spouses are like, I'm trying to say, imagine a scenario where somebody's living on Mars in like a let's say nice apartment, right? And so they're like, man, it's like, it doesn't feel like home though. And then it's as if like because it's as if it's a different planet. Imagine Mars already had a civilization on it, and they were also trying to build their own advanced civilization, and we were like, no way. It's like, you guys are building an advanced civilization too. It's honestly just the ability, like, greatness cares for being. That's what I've realized. That's how the heroic spirit is born. And so, regardless of how attention is being manifestation, or guys, I just thought of a next level sci-fi concept. Imagine, it's too heavy. I can't say. But anyways, let me see. I think this talk's pretty much done. What can I see? Yeah, pretty much universal eventism, masquerading as conscious individualism. It's as if the universe is alive. Maybe what our minds are more than just, you know, a subject moving an object. They are a universal access point. It's as if our minds are our ability to observe the universe, to be the universe for some time. Right? That's what life is. Human life is like, you know, it's kind of like we don't have a choice, but it's like human life is like experiencing being the universe as much as just being in it. Imagine a person challenge themselves and they're like, okay, from that picture I drawn earlier, on the notepad of self to self, self to others, and self to world. Imagine the person's like, okay, how would my greatest, or what would the most advanced, you know, possible self, you know, what would the most advanced version of myself be? And then the person wonders, what would the most advanced version of my species be? And then the person wonders about what would the most advanced version of how the whole universe happening be. So, anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. Much blessings and namaste.